Go
That's
ahead.
great.
I'm hitting record, and I'm actually gonna switch word to gallery view. That way, your face is smaller. Because, no offense, neither of us are supermodels.
Oh, dude, I put you on gallery mode a long time ago. I can't. I can
Oh,
only
come
take.
on!
I can only take so much.
It's funny. I've been doing some videos for school, right? And I've got my Reflect app up, which is showing me, and then I've got like two Zoom sessions because I'm talking to myself. I'm like, I know you people are sick of me, but I need a mannequin or something to play the dummy instead of me being the
Yeah,
dummy.
me too. I need a good looking avatar. That's what I need.
Nice.
So
Oh,
so first day. So in the trenches for you, how'd it go at Northwest
uh,
State?
first day, phenomenally well. In all honesty, couple different reasons for that. One is I've built my program for this. Specifically, I think the socialization that we do in my classes up front, coupled with using Slack as a means of communicating for the first 8 weeks. And actually, this group has been together for a semester and a half now. So our faculty, there wasn't any real craziness with faculty today because I've been helping support some of the Zoom stuff. Just some people with issues regarding whether or not they had the upgraded account, things like that. One faculty member did a Zoom session like a 2 minute long one just to test, and it didn't record audio, so he fixed that. Like, all in all, like, the response from people who are responding has been really good. Um, the two people in my classes who I didn't get information from or make contact with over the past week, a little bit of a panic mode today. So working on kind of just scheduling an office hour to sit
Right.
down with them and walk them through the stuff.
Right. But if they would have responded last week and you'd had time to set them up, it'd be a different story, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Probably.
potentially, right? With my students, when this all bubbled, I guess it not even bubbled up, when this all exploded kind of last week. Um, this is my discipline. You have remote communication, visual communication. I mean, this is like my wheelhouse. So this is what we've been prepping for. My class was ready to rock and roll. I was sending messaging out through Slack and through the social media for my program, and then also announcements through our learning management system, which
Yep.
which go to email. So in social media, I was really reinforcing, hey, check your stinking school email, check your email, check your school email daily. And then for the most part, like I had, other than like 99% communication rate, I knew where people were at coming into today. Also, I did Google Calendar invites for all of my classes and harped on people,
Yep.
hey, yes, no, maybe, I don't care what it is, but you're going to respond. And I had like a 99% communication rate, which I thought was phenomenal based on some other stories I've heard.
That's cool. Well, that gets back to that conversation you had with Kyle, right, last week about, you'd already set up some of these protocols in your class, which,
Yes.
I think that gets back to, not just whether it's online or offline, but meeting participants where they are, right? And like you said, it's interesting, but just kind of reinterpreting it through that conversation you had with Kyle, you're pushing out, you're notifying people through social media and through Slack because that's where they get pinged, right? That's where those push
Yes.
notifications come, and then you're directing them to, hey, maybe it's just a quick message, but maybe it's a Google Calendar invite, maybe it's an email with some meteor, messaging in there, but A, you got to catch them where they are. And then B, I know from the conversations we've had, you have a pretty consistent communication plan in your class, whether it's in person or online. And that's key, right? That's why you have that 99%,
Yeah.
response rate, I'm sure. So that's cool. Cause they're used to it. Right. So,
Well, yeah, and even here now, we're not changing any rules for communication.
right.
The only rule I established today, because we use Zoom for the two class meetings today, the only rule I made was no, your questions in lecture. Hey, we are gonna have a special guest. Oh, bring me my hat. Thank you.
You have to carry it.
Yep, gotta have the hat on. Oops.
I was wondering where your hat was. There you go.
So for lecture today, yes, work from home. This is it.
There you go.
The only new rule I added today was actually not a new rule, but any questions that you have during the lecture, the Zoom session, post in the Zoom chat, not in Slack. So class is class. We've got a specific place that happens. That way, all those questions, everything can be documented in the chat or wherever else we want to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, and I've seen it today. As an example, I don't want to use my institution, but it is my institution. So I apologize. But somebody, basically, we set up a Facebook group for employees, and somebody was posting a tech problem there. It's like, no, we have help desk for that. None of our systems have really changed about how we solve problems. When we add in a new communication platform. Yeah, we got to be really, really careful with that. Like, there's certain things that each of these we've had this conversation before, right? The channel this communication comes through should indicate some level of what I'm supposed to do with it, or if I should even pay attention to it. So.
Yep. No, I agreed.
Yeah.
So, well, cool. Glad that worked out. So one of the things you posted today, right, is that you had a couple learning sessions, and you were saying that, hey, this is great. It works, for lecture and discussion, it works better than live and in person, which is obviously you're just trolling, but I think it does bring up a good point, right? That because we had the reason I bring it up is I had a discussion with some of our corporate clients today, and we had set up where one of our products is it's in person, it's immersive, it's a 12-week boot camp. You're on the ground, you're in the classroom, 5 days a week, and obviously that's not possible right now, right? We can't do that.
Right.
They're not going to put participants in there. We're not going to put an instructor there. So we talked about how we can take that to online, and how we can make that still instructor led, still, not just asynchronous or whatever. But the thing that we talked about is that each of the modalities has its strengths and weaknesses, right? And we correct for the weaknesses of the modality in different ways. But at the end of the day, right, it's all about outcomes, right? And so you might get to your outcomes with some slightly different techniques in a virtual environment than you would in person, and vice versa. And so, it's disingenuous to say, oh, well, online's just like in person. Well, of course it's not. It's online. It's not in person, right? It's different. So with that as a background or whatever, tell me about what worked really well. Like, obviously you said that because you had a pretty good session and you had some pretty good participation. What worked well in that, in your learning sessions online today?
So I think, to preface all of it, again, I spend a whole bunch of time in my face-to-face classes with socialization. So this is a group that has been together through one full semester face-to-face and then half a semester face-to-face. And I legitimately, the first full month of the semester, yes, we're doing things that apply to the learning outcomes, but the main objective is to improve socialization. So we're comfortable talking to each other, and we're comfortable giving and receiving feedback, right? Because that's, as designers, that's just something that you have to be able to do. So where I think, so we have a group who's socialized and is comfortable speaking amongst themselves. Sometimes though, in a face-to-face environment, you get people talking over each other too much, and side conversations and things like that. With remote, we have to be a little bit more structured. Even if we're comfortable, we're still using the raise your hand button. I'm still asking for people to use the thumbs up icon in Zoom. Like, it's just a little bit more structured. And I think also, I know me as an instructor was paying more attention than I typically would in a ranting lecture, because just for whatever reason, I think maybe just the different scenery, right? Or different interface into the group discussion.
Now, did you use a moderator today in your classes? Did you have somebody available to moderate for you?
I actually had two moderators ready. I had one who was there to handle any technical issues from IT. And then I had one who was there to field questions and did a wonderful job. Asked me, hey, how do you want me to interrupt you? And I was like, well, just do it. Interrupt me whenever you see somebody raise their hand, and we'll see how it goes. Now, again, this was a small class, worked perfectly.
Right. So define small. How many people do you have in there?
Oh, geez, I'd have to look, but I think both classes only had attendance of, I think the first class had an attendance of 8, and the other class had an attendance of 6.
Okay. Right.
So,
right.
So I what was the ratio? Probably half of the one class, and yeah, roughly half of both classes showed up.
Okay, cool. So, how long are your sessions? Were they 45 minutes, hour 15? What were they like?
So traditional class time is an hour and 15 for both of these classes. The one class, web page development, is actually set up was designed as an online only class that I brought to a hybrid model, 1 day a week meeting, just to kind of, it's got all kinds of videos and code along stuff that I've done. It's got like 4 hours of content that I've produced for it. But just as a check-in point, because it's a first semester class, and online first semester classes are hard for people, at least anecdotally.
Yep.
That class actually only met for 15 minutes because we were in such a good spot, and I told them to breathe and relax, that we're just going to, the way I designed that class is it's 7 modules. All of the modules have formative assessments at the end of them that you're allowed to resubmit over and over and over again. I told them, go back through your first, make sure everything is submitted through modules 1 through 5. We'll have code reviews this week through Zoom, and then we'll kick off module 6 on Monday, clean slate. That class being an online class and being built for, a non-traditional model, I actually, and knowing that code is hard and people come in with different levels, I actually have a couple buffers in there specifically for if we were to lose a week or two, just to give people who start from true zero that extra time that they're going to need to pick some of this stuff up. So we met for about 15, we did 15 minutes there, and then I followed up with some questions in Slack. Screenwriting class, again, we were just kind of level setting, didn't have any real discussion stuff going on today. And that was about, I think, a 40-minute Zoom call. But I know
was that mostly you just kind of level setting, making people comfortable, answering questions, and just kind of back and forth that 40 minutes, or what was that? What was the content there?
It was going through and me delivering a lot of content regarding, and we actually have another faculty member, a co-faculty member, us giving through just kind of like the lay of the land as it is right now. We showed off a couple of Zoom features like the breakout room, because this class, they're going to be workshopping together. So we wanted to get them comfortable with that. Showed them the whiteboard and the annotation feature. And then basically just some general questions, and then gave them very specific things to do for Wednesday when we meet again, right? So like, instead of like, hey, go paint a painting, it was like, no, just go draw a sketch of what you want to do. So we've got them. I used we have one question that we're asking people to respond to as a reflection style question, and that they can submit to us in any way, shape, or form. Then we have a Google survey that I put together that's kind of like, it's meant to be discussion prompts. So it's almost like a flipped classroom. Hey, go read the chapter and answer these things to prepare for coming in to discuss on Wednesday. But I've got a feeling with how this class interacted face-to-face, like we're going to end up using the whole hour and 15 of the Zoom call for our class times going forward, today being a little bit of an anomaly. So I'm going to argue that I'm going to bet for at least my classes, I'm probably going to have Zoom calls that go the full length of the time we're supposed to spend.
Gotcha. So how do you, so in after your past, today, and you're in, next week or next session or whatever you're into, what it's, kind of into your groove, how are you going to structure that time? Because an hour and 15 minutes is it can go by fast, but it could also be a long time to just sit in front of a camera and kind of participate. How do you, you're going to kind of structure it the way you would your face-to-face, or how are you going to break up that time or use it, and really just, I'm kind of asking this, right? So if for other teachers out there that have that, you don't want to just obviously drone on for an hour and 15 minutes. So what kind of techniques are you planning to use to break that up?
So what I'll typically do, I modeled my face-to-face and online are going to run almost identical, other than the fact that we can't sneeze on each other.
Right.
About a 15-minute rant to start the class, kind of just to get them all worked up a little bit.
Right.
And then I typically kick them out of the classroom with whiteboards into small groups of 3 or 4 to go work on something, go sketch something up. This is, present the design problem in the rant, and then you guys go work on your ideas for fixing it. Maybe they're gone for a half hour, 20 minutes, whatever, depending on what I'm having them do. I just walk the room or walk they go out into the hallway, and wherever else I go, just kind of circle around. So using the breakout room feature for Zoom, which you can actually, as the host, pop into other meetings.
You can pop into anyone, right? Yeah, that's cool.
And then kind of come back together. Everybody kind of show off their thing, present their thing, their whiteboard, and then just level set on what the expectation is that I need them to do for next time.
Yep.
And then
I think that's important.
Hold on a second. Let me finish, because I teach a lab class. So usually the last 15 minutes to half hour of class, I'm giving them the opportunity to get started, because I at least want to make sure they're headed in the right direction before they leave. So.
Right. Well, and I think that's important, right? Because, again, there's some thought and some technique, right, in moving your class online. But, to your point, right, just because you're virtual doesn't mean you can't still have interactions. You can't still workshop things. I mean, you can treat this like a workshop, just like you would in your classroom, right? You don't have to necessarily abandon that. In fact, you probably shouldn't, especially with a tool like, Zoom, where you can have people break out into groups and use the whiteboards and come back and present or whatever. So, I mean, I think that's important, especially if all of a sudden you're thrust into this and you haven't really thought about what this would look like online. I mean, you and I think about this a lot, right? Because of, the different classes we teach and kind of the line of business we're in. So, hopefully that's helpful to other people that are trying to figure out what to do with, whether it's 45 minutes or an hour and 15 or an hour and a half. You can be pretty creative with the time, even though everybody's just in front of a camera.
Yeah, because, and I think one thing to it depends on how your classes are structured, but you really need a good reason to use Zoom for asynchronous recording of a lecture. Like, if you're just going to do that, do a narrated PowerPoint or something like that, and dear God, keep it at 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right. Flip the classroom and expect people to come in, here's this, and hopefully they see some value in it, so they're going to check that out before, and then you're going to have a session where maybe you breeze through the PowerPoint for everybody who didn't read it, but then it should be in the Zoom session, like a synchronous session, should be at least some back and forth. If you're just going to lecture at people in a Zoom session, think about the last time you read a webinar and somebody just talked at you for how many other things were you doing on Facebook and everything
exactly.
else, right?
Well, and then the other thing is, to your point, if you're going to do that, why don't you just record some YouTube videos and get them up there, and then use the time, flip the classroom, and then use the time to answer questions and dig into things. Because Zoom's not, it's not a good use of Zoom to just lecture at people, right? So
yeah, I think the thing that is pretty cool though is, like, with the screen share and annotate, you can kind of, that's not ambidextrous, but is, I could pull up anything and annotate it in Zoom if I wanted to.
Yeah,
but
right.
I think this Camtasia does stuff like that, right? Camtasia or whatever, or ScreenFlow, things like that. Yeah.
ScreenFlow. Yep. So you can do a lot of that stuff. So that's cool. Yeah. Well, so related to this, we had a meeting today, and like I said, we have a lot of some of our products are in person. They're immersive, but they're not an hour and 15 minutes. They are literally 7 hours a day, right? Yeah. You're in the classroom. It's 7 hours a day, 5 days a week for 12 weeks, which is a lot, right? And so bringing that online, has its challenges, but we're proposing the same kind of thing that you did there, where we do 2 starts in the day. So we'll have a start at the beginning of the day and we'll have a start after lunch. And I think the key is in, what I heard you say with your classes, right, is being deliberate and being very structured online allows you to really, get some good results, right? Whereas sometimes, right, if you're just in a classroom and you're just kind of lecturing and like you said, maybe you wander off and you kind of, go off script for a little bit. But so what we're suggesting is there's a period of time at the beginning of the day. And, ideally, right, we'd have some video content that they could look at ahead of time, kind of flip the classroom, come back in, answer questions, present new material, and kind of have some back and forth on it. Then have a structured time, maybe where they get, they go off by themselves with this new skill, right? So whether it's coding or web page design or whatever, just to kind of get the muscle memory, the motor skills, and just kind of play with it a little bit on their own to kind of, roll that idea around. But time box that, and then have them all come back and say, okay, now we're going to break you out into these, can break you out into the breakout rooms. You're going to work with a pair, or you're going to work with a group. Here's the problem, and then, then kind of get somebody else's perspective, and then come back at the end of the day after, so we do that in the morning, do a similar thing in the afternoon. And then at the end of the day, just have an hour or so where the instructor, the TAs are available again for questions, any things that, things that went well, things that didn't go well that day, and then making sure that they're set up well for what we expect tomorrow, if there's any homework for that night. So, these programs on our end are pretty intense, right? So they're that 7 hours a day, plus there's homework at night, which is a whole different problem than, I have a 48-minute class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? But you can still use similar techniques, right? Just in bigger chunks.
Yes. It's a little bit, this, if done correctly, remote learning can be higher touch than face-to-face. Because I think in face-to-face, we just take too many assumptions. No, you're good, and go your separate way and whatever. But remote, we might want to verify that a little bit more. And no, you all are going to have a 10-minute meeting with me, or a faculty member or TA, right? Because I think, especially what you're talking about, and even some of the things I'm jumping to as the new norm out of this, there's going to be remote classes, and they're going to up our class size because some of those participants are going to be remote participants. Having that check-in time and maybe the disaggregation of faculty responsibilities, so that you're just going to check in with one of us before you leave, show us where you're at, make sure you're heading in the right direction. I think that's where I think learning done well becomes a little bit more higher touch, because we all know, or a little bit more, I don't want to say effective, but can be effective, where we take for granted too much in face-to-face. There's a lot of a sour taste in people's mouths because there's, truth be told, there are some not so great online experiences out there. How many MOOCs have we all started and not finished? But I think here's the thing I think that's really interesting from the perspective of what you guys are doing. Everybody in the country now is, well, other than grocers and some other people, are working remote. Not many of these people have been trained how to do remote work. Done well right now, the people that you're training are going to get the technical skills, but then also the remote working skills if we do this thing correctly. Yeah,
I agree. And I remember when we worked at a former employer, one of our the chief academic officer there, one of the things he had a lot of experience with was online education, distance education in the higher ed space for grad degrees, and both for faculty performance and kind of that making sure that everybody gets a good experience and a similar experience across the board, as well as checking in with your participants, right? Because you can tell, you put it in an LMS, I can tell, well, did you watch the video or did you not watch the video? When you nod your head and you say you're okay, and I look back and I know that you haven't logged in and you haven't looked at the video, I know that you're not okay. So let's probe this a little bit more, right? And we should be doing that anyway, but now you have a lot of data to, that can help you understand who's participating, who's not.
One of the things that I've instilled in some of my classes is I give them a resource list. And, some people think, oh, I'm going to watch a video or I'm going to read an article and then, whoa, my brain does magical things. And that's not how learning works, right? You actually engage with stuff.
Right.
One of the things I'm probably going to test out is for people to submit the notes that they've taken during our live sessions. And,
Yep.
I give all my students copies of field notes. I don't have one here, but, it's a field notebook. Just fill one
Yep.
page with notes. That's all I want to see is that
Yep.
you were at least, I don't care if it's doodles or whatever, but somehow, some way show me that you were moving or thinking as part of this.
Right. Well, and we've read a lot of, there's a lot of studies out there, right? That even if you never go back and look at the notes again, just the act of taking notes while you're doing something is going to cement that a little bit better than if you didn't. Right. So,
And
yeah, I think any way that you can do that is important.
And somebody who just views the lecture after the fact asynchronously has the same opportunity to take a same page of notes and submit the exact same thing or right, submit that assignment. So that's probably something I'm going to weave into one of my classes and test. I do that face-to-face because I also think face-to-face doesn't mean you're actually active and participating, right? You could be sitting there snoring on your phone, right?
Absolutely.
So one of the things I do with my face-to-face classes, I don't take attendance at the beginning of class. I take attendance at the end of class after you've submitted to me the notes that you've taken for the day.
Right.
Because that's participation and being there. Being there is not a physical thing, obviously. Being there is just a mental attention, is an attention.
Right. Are you? Yeah. Agreed. So cool. So what is your, go ahead.
No, so you don't think that what did I actually put on LinkedIn? I say some crazy stuff on LinkedIn. I'm like a perfect
so you said on
troll,
LinkedIn. Yeah, I know. Here, let me look it up. So you said, hold on. And it was funny because one of our friends, did
Sarah,
you see Sarah's reaction?
Yes, Sarah, and you can say her last name. Hi, Sarah.
Right, Sarah Dukavich.
Yes.
So you said this, just did 2 remote learning experiences using Zoom. We can do this. It's actually better than face-to-face for lecture and discussion. And Sarah was like, I don't know about that.
So I said it's better than face-to-face for lecture and discussion. Maybe for me specifically, because I go off on so many tangents. Like I've got an hour and a half to fill and I feel like I got to fill it all. Right. So I just rant about who knows whatever. Like I get a text message in the middle of the thing and it's going to set me off on this tangent. Right. Like I think with the delivery like this, just really being really conscious of, hey, somebody's going to probably use this that isn't here right now. How do we make that best for them?
Right. So that brings up another question for me. So, just talking about, again, kind of some conventions and how we're doing things moving forward. So, is it your intent? So, say I'm in a class and I want to set this up. I got a Tuesday, Thursday lecture. Mm-hmm. We do it on Zoom. Are you recording all of them and then making them available to the participants in the class, whether they were there or not? And if so, how are you doing that? You put it up on YouTube, you share it via Google Drive. What does that look like?
So I actually just recorded a video for this earlier today. I'm trying to document my process as much as possible. So the Zoom recordings, I record to the cloud. The Zoom cloud, unfortunately for educators, is only like a half gigabyte. And for, I think, professionals, still a gig, which isn't a lot of space when video files, even though Zoom does a heck of a job compressing. Like I'm amazed. Zoom compresses a half hour down into freaking 300 megabytes. And I'm like, wow. Somebody used to work with 4K footage. Like that's just blows my mind. Right. So if you have something, and this is what I tell people, if you have something that immediately has to go out afterwards because it's time sensitive, well, please go to Zoom into their back end recordings. You can share out right directly from their back end. Ideally,
So when
though,
you say share out, though, what does that mean?
oh,
I mean, can you share that straight to YouTube?
you actually you want me to show you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So here we go. And there is so Zoom, I do have one small problem, Zoom. Like where you put your little buttons and boxes is never the right place. I always have to move things so I can click around the placement
Right.
for the face in the menu bar here. So let's see if I go to zoom.us, correct?
Yep.
And then my account, and then under my recordings, what's pretty cool, it does a horrible job naming things. This is actually us right
Yep.
here.
Yep.
That's us. If I go to click the share button, I'm able to share this with different settings. I can password protect it. I can allow people to download it, and I also get then copyable text that I could email somebody, right?
Okay.
So if I go here and add in a password, save, it actually adds it down into the body of the email text that I could send. And if you
Gotcha.
look at what's inside of that takes you to a link that gives you the video file, the audio file, and then also the chat file.
Gotcha. All right. Now, this is publicly available to anybody with the link, correct?
I think it depends on how you set it up, right? Because
Right.
there's
But
only
I mean, but
authenticate.
you can, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can control
All
some
right.
level of getting to it.
Right. So as I'm kind of thinking through this, this seems like it's would be a good solution for for a class, especially if you're meeting a couple times a week, and you just want to have these recordings available to participants in that class, right? Because you can control the link, you can get that out there or whatever. But for more widely available pieces of content or things that you want to live for longer, because eventually, right, you're going to have to get rid of these files, right? Because you're going to run out of space in the cloud. So it seems like for those things that you want more permanent or more general use, you'd want to upload those to your YouTube channel, right?
Yes.
Because this is semi-permanent, kind of is transitional storage, I guess, really, right?
Yes, I'm going to recommend that as soon as you've got your Zoom recording up, you don't share that link out with anybody. You download it and distribute it how you want to distribute it after that. There's multiple ways, YouTube and Google Drive, I use both of them.
Right.
But yeah,
The only thing I'm thinking about, like with and maybe I'm wrong because I've looked at a couple of Google Drive things, but if you're bandwidth limited, right, at somebody's house, YouTube's going to be better, right? Because you can just stream it on pretty limited bandwidth, rather than with Google Drive. Can you stream? You can't stream from Google Drive, can you? Can you, but you download the whole file?
Yeah, you would download. Yeah.
Right.
So I put it up in both places because I'm fortunate at school. Our upload speed is ridiculous. We got like 100 up, and nobody uploads anything. So I can upload a file in a second. So
right,
so yeah,
which is nice. I know I have. It takes me forever from home to upload. So that was another question I wanted to kind of get to at a college level with your participants versus I'm thinking about my kids in high school and junior high right now. Do you have any digital divide issues at the college level? I mean, do you have any students that are going to come in or participants that are going to come in, they're just not going to be able to participate in an online world because they just don't have the internet connectivity?
We have a few people who don't have smartphones and don't have internet at home.
Right. So what's the solution for that? Because that's a real problem, probably more so in public schools, right?
Yes.
Than even at college, right?
I think we have MiFi devices. Are you familiar with what that is?
I've heard
a little hotspot type
little
thing.
Hotspot. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we had some of those available to people through school. But in all honesty, everybody's got one of these, and all of my stuff is designed to be consumed through one of these. But yeah, for the most part, and again, Zoom does a really good job of buffering or whatever, not throttling. You know what I'm saying? Like I had a student on a 1 megabyte connection actually received the content fine.
Good.
And then offering the download option so people could even like pull into our parking lot or the library parking lot and download from their Wi-Fi. I think
Right.
that yes, it's going to be a pain in the rear for some people, but I mean, that's just, it's either that or nothing. We can't run wires to your house right now,
Right.
unfortunately.
No, no, exactly. So, yeah.
So
So interesting.
do you want me to show you what I do with these, how I get them? I mean, you know how to upload to Google and to Drive, but I wanted to show you just a couple
Yep.
things, tips and tricks to make
Yeah.
things sing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I look at the files, again, they have, I'm going to go to download this file here. They have god awful file names. I mean,
Right.
they're amazing because they can be parsed out with a piece of software and tell you exactly what's going on for the most part. But it's giving you the time and the date, the half of the truncated name, and then the screen size. That really doesn't mean anything to anybody. It doesn't give me any indication what the content is for, correct?
Right. No, not useful.
And you and I understand how folders and naming conventions and things like that work for storing files, because that's like your program doesn't work if you don't do that stuff.
Right.
But for the masses, just downloading to your downloads folder, well, that's just what I'm going to do. So
right.
how we name our files is super, super important. It's also important for me because I've got a workflow that includes uploading to YouTube, uploading to Google Drive, uploading to Temi to get the transcript done. So having a consistent name for my files needs to start like right here. So
Yep, agreed.
I downloaded the files from here and give them all the same naming convention, starting with usually the course number. That way everything kind of like gets grouped together. You can see here, kind of sort of maybe the 3 of the files I did earlier, and make sure I don't overwrite this, but for CIS 129, the video file,
Yep.
the audio file, and then the chat file, the text file, downloaded right here. They all get lumped together, nice and neat.
Yep.
Same thing
Yep.
for the other class that we did. That was ENG, right? I probably deleted those off of here because I'm trying not to keep multiple copies, and I did.
Right.
But anyway, so you can see this.
So the other important thing that I saw that you did there that I think
Yeah.
is important, go back to your naming convention,
Yeah.
is, well, the other thing that's important is you're using ISO date format.
100%.
Because and we're a little geeky about this because we do this all the time, but you prefix it with your course name and it's going to sort by that.
Yep.
And then if you do ISO date, it's going to sort in date order, which
Yes.
in your, if you sort by name, it's going to give you a chronological idea of when they were recorded, and then you can put a descriptive name at the end, but at least everything gets sorted by course and then by chronology, which is super handy. And you just don't, and it just comes for free by naming your stuff right?
Yes. And then even if I were to download every single thing into my downloads folder, bingo, bango, bongo.
It's still going to sort out. Yep. It's going to sort out right.
And I don't want to pick on them, but I will. If everybody, all of my faculty, all of our peers save thing as chapter 1 lecture, well, when I download it, either I'm going to overwrite somebody else's or I'm going to end up with chapter 1, parentheses 1, parentheses 2, parentheses 3.
Right.
And there's no
meaning.
meaning.
Exactly.
We got to think about the users not as somebody who just is going to access the content when we think they are and maybe do it one time. We also have to include information about them that helps them go back to it, right?
Exactly.
So when did this happen and what's in it is vital, not only for those users but also us as future users. Like we're the future users of this file naming convention as well. So using the year, the month, and the day sorts everything in a way where I can figure out what I did last year, the year before, all grouped together, all nice and neat. Because if I were to go month first, then all of my marches would be grouped together. And I'm like, well, what the freak?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So,
not useful. Right.
Yeah.
Now it's really important. And, having that, just having that organizational tool there and having that nomenclature in place, again, makes it easier for us, makes it easier for our students. And to your point, think about, I'm taking 3 classes at college,
100%.
3 different professors. And to your point, if they're all, if I can organize them by the course and by the date, it just helps me, right? It lessens the cognitive load on everybody.
Yes.
And it makes it really easier to figure out where you need to be. You're not spending brain cycles on stupid things. you're spending your brain cycles on actually hopefully learning the content, right?
Yes.
So
That's,
yeah, good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I know that was one of the things you wanted to talk about today, but super important, right?
The
Super important.
another pro tip on keeping things sorted is I just came up with this today. Different backgrounds based on the actual. Can you see the code in the background there? Does that switch out?
Yep.
Yeah.
So one of the
Using
things that I
different backgrounds.
noticed, right?
Yes.
One of the things I noticed with the background, so you can see behind me, I have a bookcase.
Yes.
And so this side of my head is always really nice because I have a nice clean wall.
Yeah.
Over here, it's like I got books sticking out of my head half the time with the background. So if you can have a nice blank background behind you before you use the fake backgrounds, it's helpful. But
well, so my classes, I teach, I can't remember, 4 or 5 classes right now, or 6, somewhere in there, right? Who knows? But I have the same students in like 3 or 4 of those classes. So
right.
I'm using it as a way to help them. Okay, this is code class. Okay, cool, because there's code in the background. So,
yep.
And
yeah, but we used to do that with our terminal windows. When we were working on different systems, and you'd have, so you could just, again, so you could kind of tell where you're at, right? Oh, this is the green background, so I'm on that server. This is the red background, I'm on production. I better be careful, right? So
nice.
It's helpful to have those visual cues to help you understand where you're at with Mr. Vanderpool, right, for the 3rd time in a day.
Yeah, these poor kids.
Right.
Yeah, so really, naming conventions and then using the tools, the features of the tools, and working out some of the issues. Like raising the hand, that's a feature of the tool to help people to have better discourse, or more managed discourse than you might have in a face-to-face.
Right.
I think again, as you and I have talked about over the years, the future is of taking the best of online and the best of face-to-face and making and letting them work together. And I think like this right now, what's happening, we're going that direction.
I agree with that. And it's interesting that you talk about raising hands, because we were talking to the client today. One of the people on the call was real old school, and he's like, listen, I learned in a classroom where I could raise my hand and that kind of thing. And as we had the discussion, he's like, well, how do I know that this, an instructor-led online is going to be the same as in-person immersive? And I said, well, one way that you're going to know that is that we always, again, we focus on the outcomes, right? The modality is adjacent to the outcomes, and some modalities make certain things easier and certain things harder. But at the end of the day, right, when you're talking about your assessments, like, your assessments for your class haven't changed, right? Just because you're bringing this online, it doesn't mean that we're asking anything different from our students, right? We're still going to ask them to do the same things. Now, the way that we get them that information and the way that we have them practice and the way that we have them work together might be a little bit different. But at the end of the day, they're either going to acquire the skills or not, right? So, and again, it's not so necessarily so important what the modality is.
Yeah. So side note, just because this made me think about it, right? I think one of the things that sometimes gets missed in interactions like this is that we don't spend any time having social discourse before, like that 5 minutes, 10 minutes before class, or at the end of class where we're just talking about nothing. Like online remote stuff always seems to be so matter of the fact, to the point, that we don't ever really sometimes connect as humans. So I think that's probably what people really miss, is that feeling that somebody a real person is with them, right? Because there's that physical person there face to face. Online, think about all the experiences we've had, with customer service on telephones, how crappy that, we've been trained to expect that these types of interactions are going to be less. I think right now is the time we flip the script on that and say, no, the internet is all hyper everything, right? Hyper text, everything is better, kind of. Let's use this same stuff here in our discourse, both face-to-face and online.
Agreed. And maybe show up to your Zoom session, 5 or 8 minutes early. And as people wander in, to your point, just start chatting with them like you would
Mm-hmm.
as they walk into your classroom, right? And I think, because I think you're right. A lot of times with online, it's like, oh, it's 9:01, we're going to start, and boom,
Yeah.
you're in the lecture, and there's no humanity there, right? So and talking about nothing, right? In normal times you can talk about sports or whatever it is. Now, just talk about what happened, talk about what's going on. So
Or do
that
something
does
like,
help humanize things.
or do something like this, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
leave that there, and then you can actually just mute your microphone and still be in the room, and just see like that 5 minutes of after 9 is when you're supposed to start. You start at 9:05, but A just got
Right.
back, and they've had an actual opportunity to talk to each other a little bit, right? I mean,
Yeah. I think that's important. And they're talking about that in teamwork environments as well too, right? There's a lot of people. I mean, you and I work remotely a lot, but a lot of people don't. And of course, I've worked remotely so long that it's just, I mean, we do this automatically, right? If we have a meeting, we get there a little bit early, we're waiting for somebody, we're just chit chatting like you would in a conference room, right?
Yep.
And I think that's important. You got to make those connections.
And it's wild because this is a statement that was made multiple times this week from multiple people on our campus, that they felt more connected now to the campus community in the past week from doing stuff like this and getting trained on stuff like this than they have in face-to-face. I don't think we realize
Right.
how much some of us don't actually leave our offices
Right.
face-to-face.
Right.
I mean, even when it's a small walk down the hallway with a question, we're going to send an email. We're sending an email a million, however, 1,000 miles to actually only go 30 feet. It's kind of silly when you think about it.
Right.
But
Right. That's true.
yeah, that socialization part, because even face to face, right? You've been in environments where it feels like people only come to you when they ask for something, and it's all utilitarian.
Yep.
Like, you need to do something for me, I'm contacting you now. I mean, like, water cooler. Like, I did a coffee little meetup this morning for work in Zoom, just to hang out, have coffee together, whatever. I mean, remote does not have to mean on an island. And I think that's the one.
Well,
big thing.
right. And that's what, I've read a lot of things, right? We call it social distancing. That's the term we're using now, but somebody was saying we should really call it what it is. It's physical distancing.
Yeah.
What we should be doing is getting closer socially. And we have a lot of technology to help us do that, right? We shouldn't isolate each other socially. We just should physically stay apart from each other right now. So it's important to stay connected.
And I mean, this is the amazing thing, Ward, is look at, I mean, Facebook. Facebook is the way we've been socially connected and interacting. All of us, well, other than you, the vast majority,
everybody else, yeah.
The vast majority are already connecting like this in other ways for different things. It's just that, like, I think there's a comfort in having a space that you work in, right? I think that's one of the things we might want to talk about when we talk remote later on, is like, okay, how do I keep work and home separate when they're the same place? That would be a good topic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be. So cool. Well, I think we're probably pretty good for today. We're just about at an hour, and we'll be back tomorrow with more Tales from the Trenches. Next week, I definitely want to invite my daughter on, and if she'll do it. And if not, I'll talk to her offline, but I want to see what her experience is as a student. She's at Ohio State. So I want to see how her first week was. The one thing I did want to mention before we hop off, so really interesting. Last week they were still, and they had an extended spring break. So 2 weeks ago was their real spring break. Last week was the week that they allowed everybody to get off campus for Ohio State. And then today was the first day of remote classes. So last week, and I'm not an aficionado of the Doom franchise, but my understanding is one of the new Doom games came out last week. And so one of her teachers is a huge Doom fan, and was, basically just let the class know, hey, I'm going to be playing Doom on Twitch. If you have a question about class, just swing over by Twitch and I'll answer you while I'm playing, which I thought was really cool, especially in an informal kind of thing. They're not actually in class and whatever, but it's just another way, again, to connect and to socialize. And then this professor has a better, has a plan for this week that doesn't involve Twitch, for actually, teaching the class. But it seemed like all of her teachers had a plan. So it'll be interesting to see after a week how those plans worked out and what it was like that first week online for her.
My biggest fear, in all honesty, is that we just pump and dump to online, and it's a shitty experience for people, and it sets us back farther because people aren't going to see this as a viable solution when it really is. It takes time.
It has a potential.
Yeah.
Like you said, we can take the best of in-person and the best of online, and we can really create very rich educational experiences. Yeah, I hope that people don't screw this up so much that people are really off.
It's just like in the face-to-face classroom though, right? If you just show up to class, deliver your lecture and walk out, what is that? Right. But if you're actually talking to people, getting to know them a little bit, obviously keeping the barriers up that you need to keep up, but like just treating people like people and getting to understand them a little bit better, where they're coming from. I mean, that just makes it easier for you to teach people if you can have some frame of reference as to what their experience has been. So
agreed.
I could rant, but I won't.
Yeah, me too. We could talk for hours, but
yes,
we'll have another chance to do this again tomorrow. So I think this is a good start, and we'll keep it going. Hopefully, we said something to help somebody.
Yeah, if we can help one person, it'll be worth it.
We can help just one person. There you go.
Even if that person is ourselves.
That's right. That's right.
All right.
All right, man. Well, take care. I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
Right on.